Hello, hello, hello. Well, my name is Suzanne Hart, and welcome to Mindset Mastery. It is going to be a great topic today. Today, our topic is about acceptance. And why this topic came up was I did a post a few weeks ago, and I talked about why do we ignore the data? Why do we ignore the data? And I got a lot of comments. I even got some phone calls, so I thought it would be a great topic for a live. So our topic today is all about acceptance, and it's time to embrace the data. That's really what we're talking about. And so as you join in, as you join us live, please let me know where you are joining us from and what you do. Put it in the comments section, because this is your opportunity to network. Throughout the live tonight, feel free to ask questions. Put your questions in the comments section. I will do my best to answer them during the live or after the live. If you're joining and you're listening to the replay, do the same thing. Put your comments in the comments section. Let us know who you are and where you're joining us from, because you never know who's going to listen to the live, and they may be interested in your products or service. So definitely promote yourself. Secondly, bless a life. Share this live with people who you think it will be important to. This is about sitting in acceptance. This is about being able to look at the data and powerfully take action as a result of what you see. This is truly about setting yourself for absolute transformation and change of habits and behavior. As I said, my name is Suzanne Hart, and welcome. I'm so excited to see you today. So let's jump right into this topic. So as I said, we're talking about acceptance. And one of the things I began to realize was oftentimes we get information about who we are, how we're behaving, and we ignore the data. How many times have you gone to the doctor? He's told you that something is wrong. Your sugar's too high, your cholesterol's too high, your blood work is too high. They give you some information, you leave the office, and probably by the next week, the data's gone. You're doing nothing about it. You look at your bank account, or you look at something in your business, it's not working, your credit cards are maxed out. You see the data, and for a moment you have emotions, but by the next week, it's gone. The question is, why do we do that? Why do we continue the same crazy behavior and expect that things are going to change? That is absolutely the definition of insanity. So today, the word is mastermind. If you want to stay connected, absolutely type the word mastermind in the comments section. If you want to get access to our free gift, which is a mastermind moment with me, definitely type in the word mastermind. So I see, welcome Cindy. I see Cindy has joined us. So let's talk a little bit about why we ignore the data and why don't we accept. So why is it that you go to the doctor, they give you news and you have to change, but by a week the data is gone, you ignore it. You go to your bank and you get some information, and a few weeks later you commit in the moment, but then a few weeks later the data is gone, you ignore it, and you just continue on with status quo. The question I had was, why do we do that? So I think it's because we have a hard time sitting in this thing I call acceptance. To accept what is, right? To accept the data and take it in and say, I'm gonna move with it. We have a hard time with it, but the question is why? I was really curious about this. So let me give you my take on it, and I trust that this will serve you. So first of all, what is acceptance? Acceptance is to just analyze and look at the data, just like you're taking inventory. If you were taking inventory of products and services, what you stocked with in your business, you would take an inventory, and you wouldn't say, "Ooh, this product is bad." You wouldn't do that. You count the product, and you track the information, right? And you use the data to take the next step in your business, right? Taria always talks about the analytics of Facebook. She's tracking the data. The data doesn't have her get all emotional. She tracks the data and then she goes and does stuff. It's the same thing in our lives. We are provided data all the time. Our body gives us data. Our bank account gives us data. Relationships give us data. And the question is, why do we ignore it? So to sit in acceptance is just to take an inventory of the data, but then you are supposed to act on that inventory, right? And so What is acceptance? Acceptance is to accept the what is. It is what it is. No emotions, no anything. Now, what acceptance is not is to give up or surrender. Because sometimes when I tell people you got to sit in acceptance, right? They say, but I don't want to surrender. I don't want to give up. I want to fight. It's not that. It's just accepting the information in front of you for what it is and using it to move yourself forward. So the question I kept asking myself is, why do we not accept the data? Well, this is what I've come to. Oftentimes when we get information about who we are and how we're being in the world, how we show up, it evokes emotion, right? It evokes emotion. And sometimes the emotion is shame, right? Sometimes the emotion is blame. Sometimes the emotion is anger. Sometimes the emotion is fear. Sometimes the emotion is just worry. You get worried. Sometimes we get very judgmental about who we are and what we've been and what we've done. So we sit in this soup of emotions that don't serve us. Now, this is what I know, and you can tell me if this is true for you. I will avoid pain if I can, and I'll run towards pleasure, right? So those emotions that I'm talking about, judgment, guilt, fear, anger, frustration, anxiety, worry, I could go on and on and on. They evoke pain. And they also activate what I call story, right? In our judgment of ourselves, we start creating a story of who we are and how disappointed that we are about ourselves, how we should have known better, we should have done better, how could I have done this? I'm so embarrassed, I'm so ashamed. What if people find out? What if the neighbors find out? All that sort of thing. I can give you personally, I remember when I was financially upside down, and every time I'd go look at my bank account, I would get so upset. And I would feel so embarrassed that I had gotten myself into this situation. And I would sit in shame, but I also sat in blame, right? And I blamed other people for my situation. I sat in frustration. I was frustrated because I couldn't figure out an answer. I sat in like anger because I have 7 years of post-secondary education. I had done what I was supposed to. Why was I in this situation? And the pain of that became so overwhelming. And of course, I would tell myself the story of, you're so bad, you should know better. This is so embarrassing. If people only knew, you're a phony. I went on and on and on. And all it did was escalate my pain. And when the pain got high, guess what I wanted to do? I wanted to avoid. So let me ask you something. Do you, when you hear the data, does it evoke these emotions, and do you want to avoid the emotions? Because that was me. I wanted to avoid it. So I would close my bank account, I would ignore it, and I would just pretend like all was well. And I did that for years, and I did it till I got to a place where I really couldn't ignore it anymore. But I wouldn't sit in this thing called acceptance, and it's actually just looking at the data. So that's the first thing we do. But this is the thing. When we get caught up in this worry and all this anxiety and all that stuff, and we create the story, it is actually the story that we're writing that has us not be able to accept. Now, this is the interesting thing. One is the story useful? No. Is the story true? Half the time, not. Is the story going to help you? Absolutely not. So our best way to sit in acceptance is to be willing to stop the storytelling. To be willing to stop your personal dialogue that's going on, that narrative that you have, that movie you've just created about who you are and what you've done, is to silence that story. And I say it's to give up shame, blame, judgment, guilt, worry, anxiety, fear. Just give it up. Now, people will ask me, well, how do you give it up? I'm gonna talk a little bit more about that next week on the next live. But how do you give it up? The one is you just have to accept it. Because you see, when we deny how we're feeling, we push it down and then we avoid it because it's uncomfortable. But when you're able to sit in it and just accept, I'm worried, I'm afraid, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, all those different things, and just accept it, it allows you to start to be able to deal. Because you see, the thing is, we think that when we avoid something, the emotions go away. No, they get buried, but then they pop up at the craziest time. And then you're angry and you're frustrated and you're anxious, and people are wondering what is wrong with you as you go on this emotional roller coaster. What's happening is you're avoiding dealing with how you're feeling. So the first part of acceptance is to accept the data, and then two, to accept your emotions, and to three, to stop writing the story that those emotions are creating. Because really, the story is not real, and a lot of times our emotions are what we're feeling, but are they helpful in terms of moving forward? Not always. So that's the first part, and I talk about pulling things apart. So this is how I'm feeling, this is the data, and this is the story. And I go, can I park the story on the side and just let it go? So that's my first thing. The second thing I want to do is I want to kind of deal and just accept how I'm feeling and just let that move through me. And sometimes it's crying, sometimes it's talking to a friend and just getting out the emotion of it. Now, when I'm able to do that, I'm actually in a place to be able to look at the data. So I remember back when I actually was able to do that, I was finally able to look at the data for the first time without the judgment, right? Because whenever worry, guilt, shame, blame came in, it put me right in judgment. And it was the judgment that created the story. So if I could just park that, it almost looked like I had a blank canvas. It was almost like when I pushed all those emotions to the side and said, you know, I get I'm feeling that, but let me not make it mean more than it is. I'm feeling bad, right? I don't have to embellish and create this whole story because the story is just me making up stuff because I feel bad. So let's park that to the side. Once I was able to do that, I was actually able to look. And the thing about look is it got real. It got real, and I got present to not only how real it was, but this thing called impact, the impact of it on my life, and the impact of not doing something, right? So I was actually able to sit in the pain of it without having a story to go with it. And that was the beginning of change. And if you've heard my story before, I say, well, the pain got so great because I was able to sit and look at the information that I knew I had to do something. I sat in acceptance and said, this is where I am. This is not good. And I was able to actually begin to look. And I, for the first time, did my inventory. My inventory was startling, I will tell you that. You know, if you've heard me, I say $50,000 upside down in credit card debt. I had never until that time done the addition and looked at it and looked at all the things that were going on. So in that moment, I was able to do that. Now, this is the interesting thing. When I was able to give up the story, it was almost like my mind became quiet. And I was able to actually begin to go, what can I do? Now, this is where I really want you to get. Is when you and I quiet our mind and we start going, what can I do? Not how bad am I, how stupid I am, and all the things that we have, but what can I do? The mind, I call it, it's like a heat-seeking machine. It will seek out an answer. Because as soon as you switch from beating yourself up to asking yourself great questions, right? Bill Maher has a book called The Secret of Asking, I think it's great questions, right? When you start to ask yourself great questions, the mind can't help but look for a solution. The great example is, have you ever lost your keys? Right? You've lost your keys somewhere in the house and you're like, where are my keys? Where are my keys? Where are my keys? And your mind will just go. And sometimes you just have to stop and say, let me step away and it'll come to me. But your mind's like, where are the keys? Where are the keys? And we almost get obsessed, right? Because the mind needs to get an answer. But the problem is that when we ignore the data, we ask the wrong questions or we're making statements that are built in judgment that don't help us. But when you're able to sit and accept the data, deal with the emotion, and then start to move, what happens is you start to ask different questions. Now, when I talk about dealing with the emotion, what I'm saying is don't act from the place of emotion. And what that looks like is how many of you avoid stuff because you're acting from fear? How many of you snap at people because you're acting from anger and frustration or anxiety? How many of you worry and get immobilized because you're acting from this place of worry and you're allowing your emotions to decide your next step versus responding, right? So you're in total reaction mode. So what happens when you sit in acceptance? You actually have access to being able to respond for the first time. So when I started looking at my data, right, and looking at the information, and I've done this around my health, I've done this around my money, I've done it around my business, I've done it around relationships. When I started to look at the data objectively, right, and just looked at the information, my mind shifts and I create this clearing. And what happened when I create the clearing was my mind started asking great questions. Now I'm in full responsibility. I'm able to take responsibility for the situation. And what's beautiful about responsibility is it gives me back power. It actually moves me from the victim of my circumstances to the hero of my circumstances. Oh, Cindy saying, oh dear, all of the above. And Taria saying, when you ask your mind questions, you can't help but find the answer. Great, ladies. Thank you so much. So true. So when I started, kind of settling down and asking the questions, I sat in responsibility for the first time. And when I think of responsibility, I think of my ability to respond to a situation versus react. And we all have that ability once we settle ourselves down. So I sat in responsibility and I took ownership for the situation. And remember I said it moved me from the victim of my situation to the hero. Why? Because when I was in shame, blame, guilt, judgment, right, worry, I had given my power away. And what I mean by that is when you're blaming someone, what you're actually saying is when that person decides to do something different, my life will get better, my life will change, right? So when you sit in these emotions, what you're doing is it's almost like you're putting your life, the power for change in your life outside of yourself. You're giving it away. The moment you create that clearing, you sit in acceptance and you sit in 100% responsibility, you take ownership and you are now saying, I have the ability to respond. And your mind starts asking questions and it goes into this thing called solution and you become solution focused. And when you become solution focused, that's when you start asking those great questions. Now, this is a thing. Some of us, when we get into solution focus, we get immobilized again by fear, worry, anxiety, frustration, all those things, because we want to get it right. We want to have the perfect solution. We want to have the right solution. And again, we're immobilized. I want you to accept, and here's the language I'm using, accept that your first solution may not be the right solution, but it is a solution. It'll get you moving. And I've told this story before about hiking in Phoenix and going hiking on a mountain and not being able to see the path until I was right on top of it, right? So it wasn't until I got myself moving and I got into action that I could actually see the path. And as I continued to move, the path kept revealing itself. And then I got to a fork in the road. And this is where I really want you to get. I got to a fork. The path went in two separate directions. And I sat there and I was like, I don't know which way to go. So I chose one. And I chose the one that seemed reasonable. It looked like the right path, right? That's what happens when you make a decision. You ask yourself questions, you come up with a solution, and you go with that solution. But what happened was I went down that path and it led to a cliff, right? It really did. It led to a cliff. And luckily there was a gate, so I couldn't fall off. It led to a cliff and I said, oh, this is the wrong direction. But it gave me new data. It gave me the data that this is not the right direction. Turn around and go back. But now I knew if I go down there, that's what I'm gonna see. I'm gonna see a cliff. In life, when you are willing to be solution focused, if you act on a solution that you think is correct, don't ask yourself to be perfect. Just ask yourself, is this a reasonable solution? Does this make sense? Then test it out. Just like I found out I was going to the edge of a cliff, it gave me data to say, turn around, this is not that right answer. But I got to collect information. Then I kept moving and I went down the other path and there it was. And then I came to a place and I said, I don't know what to do. And I tested it out and I found another solution. So this is the thing I'm saying to you, is that when you sit in solution, don't put pressure on yourself to be perfect. Put pressure on yourself, or not gonna, let me change the word. Inspire yourself to take action, right? You got a solution, take inspired action. It's going to give you information. It's going to give you new data. Take that data and you'll get information for your next action. you'll get more data. Take that data and it'll give you information for your next action. And that's just how you keep moving. But the thing here is no matter what's going on, we are given data every day. Your body talks to you every day. Your friends talk to you every day, right? Your bank account talks, your business, we get data from all sorts of different places. And our tendency is either to be too busy to take the time to analyze and look at it, or we ignore it because we don't actually want to dive into it. But your access to the next level of where you're supposed to go, or for when you need to change direction or do something different, lives in our ability to look and examine the data. So this is what I'm going to say to you. Don't make the data mean anything about you, because it's just data, it's just information. Make the data something that's always useful. It's always perfect. And take it in, analyze it, and say, this is my next step. Use the data. Don't create a story around the data. Learn to be objective. Learn to take in information, park your emotions, and just analyze. And you will be amazed. Now we're talking, acceptance is a habit, right? And it is also a skill set. And the more you practice it, the quicker it happens. And the more you practice it, the more natural it comes. And then you'll get to a place where you'll be able to just move in acceptance rather quickly. But this is what I want you to know. And Cindy and I talk about this quite a bit. She always says, I thought I got here and then it was done. And because I'm at this level. But life doesn't stay the same all the time. So you might be sitting in acceptance and analyzing data, and then life changes, right? You decide you're going to add a new project to your business. Somebody joins your business or joined your life. You start a new relationship. And once again, you might be challenged to analyze the data. Then you got to sit in acceptance, be aware of the emotions, don't write the story, and start the process over again. See, one of the things I love about mastery and mindset mastery is its continuous evolution. It's not like you get to this place of mastery and then you've arrived. You get to the place of mastery, that's your next level. And then you grow, you expand your comfort zone, and then you get all discombobulated again, and then you've got to get to your next level of mastery. And it's just continuous mastery. It's the whole process of one of the principles is lifelong learning. This is about lifelong learning, new, interesting levels of mastery. So let me see what you guys are taking away today. Tria is saying such a great process. And Tria is saying accept that the first solution may not be the right solution, but it will get me moving. Absolutely. Hi, Kathy Gale. Thank you for joining. Let me see what else is out there. Tria is saying that she's a social media strategist and she helped entrepreneurs utilize social media and systems to serve, share, and shine. Thank you for posting, right? And so that's what I wanted to share with you today, right? So I'm gonna wanna leave you with embrace the data, totally embrace it. Don't make it mean anything other than it's beautiful information gifted to you to help you figure out your next step, to help you get to your next level, to help you grow, expand, and become more. So again, if this is something that you're challenged with or you wanna move through it, I'm gonna invite you to put mastermind in the comments section. It'll give you an opportunity to have a mastermind moment with Suzanne, me, and we can work through it. Again, my name is Suzanne Hart. This was Mindset Mastery, and thank you so much for joining me. I will be back here next Thursday with a new topic, and actually we're gonna continue this. And I'm gonna talk about the impact of holding on to shame, blame, guilt, and judgment. And really, what is it? And why is it so destabilizing? Why do we get stuck in it? So join me next week. Take care, everyone, and thank you for joining.